Hey y'all, maybe it's just because I'm a millennial, but there is a word that perfectly describes the moral depravity we are seeing today, and that is aesthetic. Yes, you have heard of it. It's the aesthetic. That's not my aesthetic. And I looked up the definition of aesthetic, and it means concerning with beauty, or another definition is the underlining principles guiding the work of a particular artist. So our society today is so obsessed with the aesthetic. Right fit, right look, hair, everything, posh. Gotta have this look, this perfect job, this perfect career, this perfect resume. It's all about the aesthetic that you're going for, right? And they're so obsessed with the outside, which we know that as Christians, we are very aware that's the world's only vision. But it's really because it's a deflection of the inner man. God's aesthetic is nothing like this world. And as Christians, we can't get caught up in this game of imagery of how we look to other people. Now, don't get me wrong. I love looking cute. I love looking stylish. I love being well presentable. But God forbid I use that as a cover-up, as a faux cover-up to the ugliness I have inside. No, sir. No, sir. Because the funny thing is some of the most homely people you will see out in the street are probably the most healthiest emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Yeah, they might not have the look, but honey, they are healthy inside. We don't care if you're crazy inside as long as you got the right clothes. What the world calls an aesthetic, God calls appalling. And it's crazy that we can get caught up in that same mindset, that instead of doing the internal work, we think that we could just put on a front. Honey, it doesn't matter if you got a nice fit, if you haven't done the inner bit. You gotta take care of who you are inside. Because you wanna know what God's aesthetic is? Yeah, God's aesthetic is holiness. God's aesthetic is purity, long-suffering, kindness, love. Gossiping is not a God aesthetic. No. You wanna know what heaven's aesthetic is? Yeah, take on the heart of God. That is the aesthetic He's going for. People will live their whole life thinking that they did good because they looked good. But when they get to heaven, they're not going to have all these things to hide behind. When someone becomes wise of the aesthetic of God, we recognize that it doesn't matter what we do on the outside. If our inside is so impure and tainted and damaged and destroyed, who cares? Do you know how many people have posted pics on Instagram with cute little captions with the right aesthetic and cried themselves to sleep right after they did that? I want heaven to be my aesthetic. I don't want to be aesthetically pleasing. I want to be pleasing to God. Scripture says to worship Him in the beauty of holiness. That means that God sees beauty as the inward man, as the dedication, as the consecration, as the purity within yourself. People can iron their clothes and steam it and make sure everything is so perfectly unique and uniform and coordinating, and they can have the right haircut and the right style and all these things put together. But it is such a cover-up. We often try so hard to look good on the outside to cover up for the fact that we feel so bad on the inside. God help us not get caught up in the aesthetic of the world, their principles to their artist that they are contributing to. But let us have those principles that reflect your artistry. Simply put, compared to a God who can redeem a soul from eternal damnation, this world's aesthetic is pathetic. Again, maybe it's just because I'm a millennial mom, but I am over the aesthetic. Bring on the empathetic. We are so much more than our outside. We are so much more than our social media. You know what Jesus's vibe was when He walked the earth? He's with the lowly, the outcast. He wasn't attractive looking. The scripture says He made no reputation for Himself. He wasn't about putting on airs and being so attractive to people. But look at Him. He's the most powerful being that ever walked the earth and still rules and reigns, obviously, beyond just His time as a man. We are such short-sighted, shallow creatures to think that we can put on a costume and be put together. No, honey. The work starts here. Whew. It's not evil to have nice things or look nice, or my goodness, we need people to look put together and be an ambassador for Christ, as scripture also implores us to do. But we can never think that that's enough. Even within a church organization, we can put on a front to look like we're okay, that we're doing right, that we're living right. But God always sees the aesthetic of our hearts. Let us be honest with Him today and let Him work on that aesthetic. I love you guys. Be blessed.